Bhaktivinode Thakura per se, but I'm going to give some stories from one of his books, the Jaiba Dharma, and some of the philosophy from the Jaiba Dharma. Because this morning I actually talked about Bhaktivinode Thakur.
Said, buddy. Because no rain now, it's good. Rain not coming. Said.
So Mukhababu, please mute yourself.
So, live stream. This is, let me get this going. So this morning, I gave a whole class about Bhaktivinode Thakur and his life and his prodigious publications. Prodigious means like he published a lot. Let me just So Bhaktivinode Thakur and his many publications, very important publications, and particularly we're going to be speaking about one of his publications called the Jaiba Dharma, which details the philosophy of Krishna consciousness all the way from Sambandha to Abhideya and Prayojana. What that means, Sambandha, of course, is the basic tattva philosophy, relationships between the material energy, the spiritual energy, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Jiva souls. That's Sambandha. Abhideya means the process of actually advancing in Krishna consciousness or becoming Krishna consciousness. And then Prayojana means the goal of Krishna consciousness, which is basically pure love of Godhead. So Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. And so the Jaiva Dharma, Bhaktivinode Thakur speaks about these three subject matters in the context of different stories. And two stories we want to relate to all of you today. One story is the story about a sannyasi, Mayavadi sannyasi, became a devotee. And the other story is about a household couple who had very bad children. And I'm not going to tell the story now because we're going to chant first. That's all right. Do some chanting, and what we're going to do is chant some songs that were written by Bhaktivinode Thakur. There we go. Right there. And I think everybody knows Jaiba, right? Yeah. No? Yes. And then we'll end with chanting Hare Krishna, and then if everyone gets enthusiastic, we can maybe get up and dance or whatever. Depends on your level of hormones. But it depends on just depends on how you feel. So Jaiba was written by Bhaktivinode Thakur, and then there's another song called, well actually they're connected, it's Arunodaya Kirtan Part 1, which is Udila Arya. And then we'll chant Hare Krishna too. So Mridanga, and you can also play the harmonium, you can follow me with the harmonium. With no cocktails. One other song from Arunodaya Kirtan, which is known as Udila Arana. Does everybody know that song?
Yeah, first time.
Yeah, we like the mobile phones. And then we'll chant, O Hey Vaishnava Thakura, of Bhaktivinode Thakura. It's pretty much the same melody. So. It's called Arunodaya Kirtan. So, and next time I have to adjust this strap. Give me a second. Strap is too. This one. Even sannyasis get gurus. Okay. Just a way of writing about Thakura. This is a very beautiful song about Thakura. translations of these poems by Bhaktivinode Thakura we just read. All right, thank you. All right. It's okay. Still, last time we were in the park and we did this real ecstatic kirtans, I rubbed the skin off of my arm. But it's better now, but just want to prevent it from happening again. So, Jaleel, don't touch the other thing. You can give me the garland. Thank you. So, I'm going to read the translations for these 3 songs we just sang, of Bhaktivinode Thakura's songs. And one is from this song called Sharanagati. And the other 2 are from another song called Gitavali. Bhaktivinode Thakur was a very prolific. Okay. Playtime. Bhaktivinode Thakur was a very prolific writer, and this morning we were reading the names of some of the literatures that he actually wrote. And we didn't even do, I think, 1/10 we didn't even read 1/10 of the names of the literatures that he wrote. Amazing devotee. And he presented Krishna consciousness in such a way that's easily understandable for people all around the world, because he presented it in a very digestible format generally in terms of stories, because everyone likes to hear stories. Like the Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam is filled with stories, and then right after the story there's prayers. So you can digest the prayers quite easily when you hear the stories. So let's just read the translation of these 3 poems, and I think we'll speak a little bit about them, and hopefully we get into what I wanted to speak about tonight, with some of the excerpts from one of Bhaktivinode Thakura's literatures known as the Jaiba Dharma. Jaiba Dharma is, like I said, it deals with every aspect of Krishna consciousness from A to Z, or what I described in the beginning as Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. 3 stages of devotional service. But let's read the translation of these poems. First, in honor of Bhaktivinode Thakur, there's this song, O Hey Vaishnava Thakur. So, O venerable Vaishnava, O ocean of mercy, be merciful unto your servant. Give me the shade of your lotus feet and purify you. I hold on to your lotus feet. Now, the interesting thing about this particular expression, holding on to your lotus feet, it means more than just what it appears to mean. Like if you want, like Prabhupada one time answered when a devotee said, I want the shelter of your lotus feet, and Prabhupada said, my lotus feet are always moving. It's like they say, you have a moving target, it's very hard to hit. So what did Prabhupada mean by that? That we should just like go on a morning walk with him and just like try to grab his feet as he's walking? Actually, I didn't do that, but I took the dust of his feet as he left footprints in the sand. Actually, Prabhupada did leave footprints, and I can attest to that. So, but it really means a lot more than that, because the dust of the feet means following in the footsteps. There's 2 words that we have in Sanskrit, anukara, anusar. One means to imitate. Sometimes people try to imitate an acharya without being on the proper platform. And the problem with that is then you make a nosedive if you do that. It's like a story, I can tell the story, it's an interesting story I learned when I was a kid. It was about some frogs. Some of you may have heard this story before. Once upon a time, there was a frog, and he was the king of the frogs. And he had gotten the benediction from the sage that all he could say he would be the king of. It's pretty good, isn't it? I mean, if I got that benediction, I'd probably go up in an airplane. But at that time, there weren't any airplanes for frogs. So this frog, he thought, well, we could use these other frogs to make pyramids. You know, if you have a pyramid, you know what a pyramid is? Like if you have 20 frogs, then it becomes 19 frogs and 18 frogs. You can get pretty high. You can do frog skyscraper this way. So this frog had gotten the benediction, you know, whatever I see, so we go high. So what he did is that he asked for all of his subjects, the little froggies, to make a pyramid for him. You know, I guess it was like 50, 49, 48, 47, 46. And he was, wow, this is good. I can see so much. So he climbed higher and higher and higher. And what happens is when you get real high with it, that sort of pyramid, unless you got support on the side, unless you got spiritual realization, then the thing starts to waver a little bit. So he got to the top, and he was really in ecstasy. And it started to waver, and he did a nosedive. And so his head was immersed in the mud. So all he could see was the mud. So he became the king of the mud. So the moral of the story is, and also, of course, in Bengali there's this statement, I don't remember the Bengali, but big belly, big monkey, sail on jumping melancholy, that you may try to imitate Hanuman and jump to Ceylon, but then you will also end up with your head in the mud. So, in other words, we're not supposed to imitate the great Vaishnavas, Srila Prabhupada, or all these great acharyas, Srila Vyasadeva, but we're supposed to follow in their footsteps. This is really what it means, the shade of their lotus feet. Following in their footsteps means to understand their mood in devotional service. So Bhaktivinode Thakura, what was his mood? He's an eternally liberated soul, a gopi in the spiritual world. And yet, we find in his pastimes, we were reading about his daily schedule, he was waking up at 10 o'clock at night, took rest at about 8, woke up at 10 and wrote literatures all night long until he picked up his job. He's enchanted in the early morning. And then did his job as a Supreme Court magistrate. In other words, he actually held a full-time job. And he was extremely regimented in his time schedule, punctual. He didn't believe in Indian Standard Time. In fact, he always carried a pocket watch. In those days, they didn't have wristwatches, or maybe they did, but he didn't use the wristwatch. And so he was able to accomplish so much, and he sacrificed his whole life, and he raised a family. How many kids did he have? Like 10? 10 kids. Do any of you parents have 10 kids? Do any of you have 5? What's the most?
2.
2. 3. Is it a lot? No. That's pretty good. So 10 kids. And so yeah, 10 kids, wife, which that's how you get kids. So he had 10 kids and a wife, and he was able to produce so many literatures that practically nobody in history has ever produced so many literatures. And not with a computer. I'm not sure. I think he hand-wrote everything. I don't even think he wrote it with a typewriter. He hand-wrote literatures in Sanskrit and Bengali and English, and he knew Orient, and he knew Urdu, and it was Hindi, of course, and so many different Persian, so many different languages. And sacrificing his life, like we were describing about the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan this morning, Nana Shankaracharya Nipano Siddhana Samstapako Lokanam Hitakarano Tribhuvane. for the welfare of us, not for himself. I mean, that's a Vaishnava. He just like sacrificed it. And of course this morning, those of you who heard this morning's class, I made reference to a class that I heard Srila Prabhupada gave this morning. He didn't give it this morning, but I listened to it this morning. Where Prabhupada said that in order to bring someone to Krishna consciousness, we have to be ready to shed gallons of blood. Prabhupada said, bring one person to Krishna consciousness, we have to be ready to shed gallons of blood. Can you imagine that particular metaphor? And Prabhupada didn't mean that, obviously you cut yourself in gallons. Prabhupada meant that we just have to be ready to sacrifice our life's energy. Then Prabhupada, in fact, said that to bring people. And then, of course, we find Krishna's statement in the Gita that those persons who do that are most dear to me. Never will there be those or anyone more dear to me than those who actually dedicate themselves in this particular way. So Bhaktivinode Thakura, can you imagine sacrificing any sort of vacation? We all like to go on vacation. Of course, he went to Vrindavan 3 times, I understand. But we all like to go on different vacations to the ocean and enjoy and things like that. But he sacrificed everything. He didn't do anything for any other purpose other than pleasing Krishna and satisfying Krishna. So when we talk about the shade of the lotus feet, that's our example or exemplar, our role model, something that should really inspire us, Bhaktivinode Thakur. And that's what it means to hold on to the lotus feet of a pure devotee. Although, sometimes we touch a pure, like I touch Prabhupada's feet. Fortunately, Prabhupada never patted me on the head to give me my karma back. But anyway, when someone touches your feet, you get the karma. And then you touch their head, they give you the karma back. Did you know that? I told you that before. That's why when anyone touches my feet, I pat them on the head. Think Maharaj is giving me some mercy. No, I'm just giving you karma. So anyway, so this is the first verse. Actually, I can do a whole class about that. And then, teach me to control my 6 passions, rectify my 6 faults, bestow upon me the 6 qualities, and offer unto me the 6 kinds of holy association. Of course, this is actually in reference to Padeshamrita, the 2nd verse. Rupa Goswami's Padeshamrita. How when Vacho Vegam is a Proto Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Rupa Vegam, and other verses like the Dati Swati, Rivanati, Guyamaketi, Pruchati, but I'm not going to go over the whole thing. So here it says, teach me to control my 6 passions. It's really interesting. It doesn't mean that he controls our 6 passions, or he controls our 6 faults, or well, of course, he does give us the 6 kinds of holy association, accepting prasadam, giving prasadam, revealing the mind in confidence, and hearing from others in confidence, and giving gifts and accept gifts. But basically, the 6 passions and the 6 faults are something that we have to work on ourselves. He teaches us how to do those things. Just like we find in the pastimes of Krishna, where Balaram kills certain demons, those demons represent anarthas. That means unwanted things that we have to deal with ourselves and control ourselves, following the instructions of the spiritual master, who represents Balaram. So the Guru gives us the mercy by giving us instructions in how to deal, to control the senses. Vacho Vega, Manasa Krova Vega, Jiva Vega, Rupush, Ashta Vega, like the tongue, belly, genitals, mind, anger, and words. And of course, we also have 6 senses. Manasashtani, Indriyani, Prakriti, Stani, Kashti, 5 normal ones. And then, of course, the mind. So he teaches us how to do that. And how do you do that? How do you control these things? They're more difficult, as Arjuna says, as a Chanchalani Mana Krishna, Pramati Balavajra Dhammatajaham Nigraham Manye. However, Eva Shidushkaram, more difficult than controlling the wind. So, how do you do that? You have to be, according to Krishna and Bhagavad Gita, what is it? Ekayakurnandana. You have to be focused on your goal. And what is the goal of Krishna consciousness? To love Krishna and please Krishna. If you're really focused, like we see someone who's successful in this material world. Oops, I hurt my skin on this one too. Someone who's successful in this material world, the only way they can become successful is to be very focused on doing what? Like making money, or in sports, if they're entering the Olympics, they have to practice. Because at one point they're thinking of winning the gold medal. And so therefore they're able to exercise or practice or whatever they're doing for 8-10 hours a day every day. Because they're ekayakurnandana in a material sense. And then most of us are what Bhoshatas Tvanantas Cha, according to Bhagavad Gita. Our determination is many branches. Well, I like Krishna consciousness, it's nice we're here, Maharaj talks like that, little satsanga here, a little atsatsanga, asatsanga there, mix it all together, makes me happy. So, anyway, so this is really important. It's something that we have to do. And then the next verse is, I do not find the strength to carry on alone the Sankirtan of the holy name of Hari. So this is humility. Please bless me, because the strength comes from what? Please bless me by giving me just one drop of faith. Faith is the conviction. Faith is the conviction that if we simply do what Krishna wants, everything will be accomplished. We'll become happy. And we'll accomplish everything. Give me one drop of faith to which to obtain the great treasure of the holy name of Krishna. In other words, the strength comes from faith. If you actually believe, then you get a lot of strength. If you actually believe that Krishna is real, that Krishna, chanting Hare Krishna, is non-different from the Supreme Personality of God, and every time you're chanting, you're purifying yourself. Then you won't stop purifying. Then you won't stop chanting. And then the final verse here is, Krishna is yours. You have the power to give him to me. There's this little bit of creepacity here. You have the power to give him to me. But I am simply running behind. You have to run behind. Shouting, Krishna, Krishna. In other words, following in the footsteps again. It just ends with the same thing. You see, it goes round in a circle. Give me the shade of your lotus feet. I hold on to your lotus feet, and at the end is I'm running behind you, shouting, Krishna, Krishna. In other words, following in your footsteps. That's really what it means. Not that you just find a pure devotee, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. If you take this literally, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's really meant to be taken in that particular way. Okay. So that's in glorification of Bhaktivinode Thakura, and next we'll read these translations here. And I'm not going to go so deep into these translations, and then we'll get to the Jaiba Dharma. So, part 1 is about Lord Chaitanya. Well, maybe I should get into it. When the rising sun appeared in the east, the jewel of the twice-born Lord Gauranga awakened, gathering his devotees around him, he set out to preach in the countryside, towns, and villages. In other words, he was waking people up. Because spiritual life begins in the morning. You find that every single great sage in India, they're rising early in the morning. Because of sadhana. Sadhana means practice. And the practice occurs best when it's in the mode of goodness time of the day. Every time of the day has a certain mode attached to it. So gathering his devotees around him, he set out to preach in the countryside, towns, and villages. Tatai, tatai, sound of the mridanga drums. That's what's called onomatopoetic. You ever heard that word before? Onomatopoetic means a word that sounds like what it is. You want to see what it means? Tatai, tatai. Sound of the mridanga drums. Just like you have a word in English, let's say, what does a dog do? Bow wow. That's onomatopoetic. Or even many words in English are like that. Cry. Like what sort of cries? It sounds like that. And the cymbals chimed in time. Lord Gaurasundar's shimmering golden features danced as ankle bells jingled. Mukunda Madhava Yadava Hari chanted the devotees, their mouths filled with vibrations, calling out. They preach to those still sleeping. You spend your nights uselessly sleeping and your days decorating your bodies. Although you have achieved a rare human birth, you do not care for this precious gift. Instead, you refrain from serving the darling of Yashoda and slowly fall through your last moments to death. With every rising and setting of the sun, a day passes and is lost. Then why do you remain idle and not serve the word of the heart? This life is temporary and full of various miseries. Take shelter of the holy name as your only business. To penetrate the darkness of ignorance and bless everyone's heart, the sweet holy name has risen like the shining sun. Drink deeply the pure nectar of Krishna's holy name, which is the life and soul of Bhaktivinode. The holy names aside, there's nothing to be had in all the 14 worlds. Well, it's deep faith. Again, the whole point is faith. Simply by doing what Krishna wants, chanting his names, everything is accomplished. And of course, there's another verse in the Gita, Shraddha Purusha Dharma Shastra Parantava Prapyamati Vartante Ritu Samsara Vartmani. For those that don't have faith, guess what? What's your reward? Those persons who don't have faith in Purusha Dharma Shastra Parantava. Krishna speaking to Arjuna, oh my young one. Aprapyamam, you can't get Krishna. Nivartante. And then you repeat, Mritu Samsara Varmani. You go on the path, Varmani means path, of Mritu, death. You repeat it, Samsara. Mritu Samsara Varmani. Okay. And then the last one here is, Lord Gaura's Chandra is calling again, he's waking us up. Wake up, sleeping soul, wake up, sleeping soul. How long will you sleep in the lap of the witch called Maya? Maya, of course, means illusion in this particular context. You have forgotten the way of devotional service and are lost in the cycle of birth and death. I have descended just to save you. And he's speaking on behalf of the holy names here. I have descended just to save you. I am your only true friend other than me. What friend do you have? I have brought the medicine that will wipe out the disease of illusion from which you suffered. Take this great chant for deliverance, Maha Mantra, the names of Hari. Srila Bhaktivinode Thakura falling at the Lord's lotus feet. Take shelter of the Harinam mantra of the Lord's holy names. So Bhaktivinode Thakura. So let's speak a little bit from, as I mentioned before, the Jaiba Dharma. We have two stories here. These are my outlines for the two stories. So I'm going to start with chapter 7 of the Jaiba Dharma. Chapter 1 is about the sannyasi. But chapter 7 is really interesting. This is about material household life. It's not against household life, it's about material household life. And what you teach the children by your example. Because as Prabhupada would often say, example is more important than precept. Precept means like instructions. But example means what you actually do. Because children, it's a story of children also. Bad children. So, children actually function on the basis of role models, which is really nice if you've got good role models. And if you have bad role models, children will follow them. So we have to be really careful when you're raising children of being good role models and making sure the children don't gravitate to bad role models, because many times, especially with young people, you want to fit in, isn't it? I remember in school, I had a hard time because I never fit. I never fit in with anybody. I was going to school before any people in this room were born. I think so. It probably is true. Is anyone? No. I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, so anyway, in the old days when everything was nice, before electricity and running water and everything like that. So I was, we had phones that you actually had to call the operator. But anyway, so I was going to school and it was painful because I wasn't into the same things that everybody was into. And it was really hard for me to find because I wasn't into sports. You know, America, it's everybody's into sports, football, baseball, or whatever stupid thing they do. You know, it's like in ancient Rome, they watched the lions eat the Christians. So in America, we let people, you know, big, anyway, Rambo people attack each other, and then we watched that happen. So anyway, so I wasn't into that. Everybody knew all the names of all the different sports heroes, and I just couldn't get it in my brain. I mean, what the heck? So in one sense, it was a very lonely time for me because I wasn't into what they were into. And so, who were my heroes? Who were my role models? Well, Prabhupada, obviously, but that was a little later in life. But it became my father. And my father was a good role model because he worked real hard. He would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, but not to chant Hare Krishna, to work. Anyway, so that's a good role model. He was actually a very good role model. So in other words, I didn't get influenced by social pressure because somehow, you know, Krishna kept me away from that. I wasn't. It was just like, what the heck? Who cares who won the 1950 Olympics or, you know, or baseball, or who was Babe Ruth? No, you heard that name before. Anyway. So anyway, so here's a story. Okay, let's go on about Thakura. They lived on the bank of the Saraswati River in Saptagram in Bengal. As Chandidas and Damayanti was the wife, and they didn't like Krishna consciousness at all. They just thought, you know, that's really sentimental, and so their home was never visited by Vaishnavas, and that's a violation of Vedic principles, because when someone comes to your home, you're supposed to receive them like what Atiti Narayan, like Narayan, even if they're coming without an invitation. You give them food. Prabhupada said, even if your enemy comes to your home, you're supposed to treat them as if, so they don't suspect that they are your enemy. That's Vedic culture. And so they were very greedy after material things. And he told his children, if you behave nicely, we'll take care of you. And his children observed this, you know, wow. The real purpose of life is being greedy. And so the parents are super, super greedy. And they live poverty-stricken, like we see sometimes, because they want to just save all their money. So what happened is, after a while, he told his children, look, if you behave yourselves and take care of us nicely, we have some hidden wealth. So after we go, we pass away, you can have that hidden wealth. So he had 3 sons. 3 sons had learned from them how to be greedy. So the 3 sons met with each other. They had a GBC conference. And they met with each other. So they met with each other, and they were trying to understand, what should we do? And the wives of the sons, also by association with their husbands, all became really bad like that too. And they thought, look, we're not going to wait. Who knows what he's going to do with his money, what they're going to do with their money. So let's take their money, but we're going to trick them. So they decided upon a particular strategy. They went to their parents and they said, look, Mom and Dad, we love you. Actually, they didn't love them because they learned the wrong things from their parents. They said, we think you should go on pilgrimage to Mayapur. You know, we want you, and we'll send this nice Vaishnavi lady to take care of you. Okay. They thought, oh, this is great. You know, our children are finally appreciating us. So they start on the way to Mayapur, and on the way to Mayapur, they get news that the children had dug up in their bedroom, because that's where people hide their wealth, taken the wealth, and they thought, let's go back. I mean, our children actually love us, because they taught the children the wrong thing. You know, it's just, if you teach the wrong thing, then it comes back to bite you. You know, that's karma. It's karma and also setting an example. Just like you have the story of Shahjahan, right? Shahjahan? He must have taught the wrong thing to his son, his father. Father put him in jail. You know, after, well, I don't know if he actually built the Taj Mahal. I think it was a Shiva temple before, but that's another story. So, this Vaishnavi lady said, don't go back. They're going to kill you if you go back. Just continue your journey to Mayapur. And so this couple had committed a lot of offenses against Vaishnavas. So they went to Mayapur because, you know, there's the ritual. They went to Mayapur. But they happened to go to this place in Navadvip called Kuliagram. Kuliagram is a very special place. It's where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu forgave a lot of offenses of different people who had offended his devotees, who offended Srivas Thakur, and who offended Haridas Thakur. He forgave people. This is known as a place of forgiveness. And they changed their perception by the influence of the holy place. Because even holy places and holy persons can actually affect your consciousness. It's like the story of Ratnagara, who became Valmiki, by chanting Mara, 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 which became Ram, Ram, Ram. His consciousness changed. Or Mragari, the hunter, he became a great saint. Or Haridas Thakur, the prostitute. We have so many stories like that. How by association, Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastra Koi Lava Matra, Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Hoy. One attains all perfection. And actually that's more valuable, the Bhagavatam says. Swardunapona Shevya. It's more valuable than repeated bathings in the Ganges River. It's really interesting. The Ganges River is the foot bathing water for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, what happened is they changed their perception in life. They thought, well, we have no money. So they opened up a grocery store to sort of support themselves. They borrowed a little money, opened up a grocery store, and then began to serve the Vaishnavas. And so by serving the Vaishnavas, Mahatseva, Uhura Vimuktes, Lord Shabbat describes that, to achieve liberation, to achieve Krishna consciousness, then Mahatseva, serving the great souls, and of course the opposite is Tamotvaram Yashitu Sangha, that if you take bad association, you serve those who are bad. I was just reading that. Yeah, actually this is interesting. Maybe it's mundane. I was just reading about the people who had served a particular president of the United States who should remain nameless. And they were just explaining what they did because they basically, to use a modern expression, they swallowed the Kool-Aid. I don't know if you know what that means. That means they associated with him. And one person who's a senator of the United States says, he actually said, once you associate with him, you'll do things that you never thought you would do before, bad things. He's a prominent senator of the United States. Really interesting. Really, really interesting. Anyway, so they started to serve the Vaishnavas, to go back to the story. And particularly they associated with a great devotee named Jaiba Das, who liked to serve other Vaishnavas. And they developed great spiritual curiosity. This is all a story told by Bhaktivinode Thakura. That's why it's so interesting. And they wanted to go along with this Yadavadas to a place called Prajuna Kunj, where there was a great devotee named Vaishnavadas. We're going to tell the story about Vaishnavadas in a second. Vaishnavadas Babaji. And they went there and they saw all the great personalities. Chandidas actually went there, and different Babajis and everything like that. And then they got all these instructions, which I'm going to repeat a few of them, about Krishna consciousness, about the different aspects of Krishna consciousness, which are part of the story. One of the instructions they got where the soul could either be liberated or be bound. The soul comes down to the material world, which actually answers the question, were we in the spiritual world before Bhaktivinode Thakura actually has come down, and the three modes of nature, and experiences bondage and unhappiness, and happiness sometimes in the material world, and can get out of this material world by regaining his spiritual identity and associating with devotees and throwing away all illusory perceptions of the soul's identity. That's known as an upadi, which is sarvapadi nirmittam tatprena yunalam rishikena rishikeshana sevanam bhakti. In other words, designations, things that we think we are. You know, we think we're male or female or young or old or Indian or American or students or sannyasis even, or householders. No. It means to accept Gopi Bharata Pada Kamala Dasa Dasa Dasana Das. And also he said that one should reject inappropriate temporary religions like Karma Kanda or Jnana Kanda. In other words, like ritualistic types of activities for the achievement of material upliftment or even liberation in this world. So anyway, so all these discussions went on. I don't have time to read about all these discussions that went on between the different devotees, and even described different types of householders, advanced householders, or householders who were ready to take sannyas. And finally, they went back home and became absorbed by the mercy of the Vaishnavas in Namaruchi, Jivadoya, and Vaishnava Seva, which are actually the secrets for advancing in devotional service. Jivadoya means compassion to the other jivas, serving the other jivas, or serving the Vaishnavas, and in this way one gets Namaruchi. Namaruchi means a taste for the holy name. And the Bhagavatam states that Dharmat Swanishtika Purusam Vishvakshena Katasuya No Padiya Didi Ratim Shama Evid Kevalam. That if one does everything perfectly and doesn't get Namaruchi, or a taste for hearing and chanting about Krishna, then basically one is spinning their wheels of wasting their time. Because anything else you attain is temporary. Of course, we use temporary things in Krishna's service. Without a doubt, that's called yukta vairagya. We're all using things, we have to do our duties within this world, but we should always keep in mind that our actual goal is Namaruchi. Namaruchi and Jivadoya, being compassionate to others and having a taste for the holy name. So that's the story of Damayanti and Chandidas, who became great pure devotees, and then they went back to Godhead. Just by having that experience. So what we can learn from that is that, as Krishna says in the Bhagavatam, Yasyahaman Gurami, Hrishyeta Dharamshanai, that sometimes he gives his mercy in ways that are a little uncomfortable. People ask often, why do people suffer in this world? Why do sometimes devotees suffer? Why did Kunti have to suffer so much? Why did the Pandavas have to suffer so much? And Prabhupada gave the answer to that. He said sometimes the parents, they have to chastise the child. Of course, the Pandavas, they are pure devotees, obviously. But the parents sometimes have to chastise the child for the child's good. Or if someone's sick, doesn't the doctor sometimes have to say you cannot eat this food or do this anymore? Right? So you say the doctor, he's very unkind, he's punishing me. But the doctor is concerned with your welfare. So in this particular case, these devotees, they were saved by an apparently, by the situation that Krishna arranged, apparently unfortunate circumstance with their children. So there's many lessons we can learn from this particular story. The first one is set a good example, or else it'll come back to bite you. That's the first lesson. And the second lesson is that we shouldn't be greedy. We should be hospitable and understand that actually whatever we have is coming from Krishna. And especially we should be charitable to the Vaishnavas and serve the Vaishnavas. That's another lesson. And another lesson is that Krishna will take care of us. And we better approach Krishna voluntarily. Or else there'll be some sort of involuntary surrender. It's not actually involuntary, because you can't surrender voluntarily. But Krishna will put us in such circumstance that it will be obvious what we have to do. So it's better do it quickly. Okay. So that's the different lessons we learn from that. So I want to go on to the first chapter of this Jaiba Dharma. It's an amazing book. I really encourage devotees to read this book. Of course, read Prabhupada's books first. But Bhaktivinode, and another thing that Bhaktivinode Thakura teaches us in the Jaiba Dharma is this thing called the Dashamula. Dashamula means the 10 essential points of Krishna consciousness, like Krishna's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, process of Bhakti Yoga, the Jiva's position. These are the different tattvas that are the foundation of Krishna consciousness. So, this story begins with a Mayavadi. And this Mayavadi, he was in Varanasi, a Mayavadi place. What is a Mayavadi? Well, let's describe that. Mayavadi is one who thinks that the Lord's body, pastimes, are illusion. Wow. And that ultimately, at the time of realization, you realize your identity as Brahman, and everything basically becomes one. So, and the Mayavadis, they have different, what we call Mahabhakyas. Mahabhakya means great sayings. One of them is, Aham Brahmasmi. You've heard that before? I am Brahman. Another one is, Tatvamasi. You are that. And these are true statements. These are actually true. You are Brahman, but you're not Parabrahman. That's the difference. Because as stated that we are the same nature as Krishna. We are spiritual. Krishna Shakti Paraprapta. Kshetragyapya Tatapara. We're the Kshetragyas, we're the knowers of the field of activities, we're the marginal energy of the Lord. We're also transcendental. And then, of course, there's this third energy called avidya karma, which is this ignorant activities, dull matter like that. So we are the same nature as Krishna. We are Brahman, but we are not Brahman with a capital B. We are Brahman with a small b. We're spiritual. Brahman actually, the word Brahman actually means the greatest. Another one is Prajnanam Brahma. That means Brahman is consciousness. That's another Mahabhakya they have. That pure consciousness merge into Brahman. Sometimes you see people, even sometimes people will come to the temple and they'll sit who have this Mayavadi conception. and they'll sit like this for hours, and we'll dance around them.
Yeah.
This is actually a story about something like this. So anyway, so we'll dance around them. You think, why are you suffering so much? Just get up and dance. We feel so much compassion, isn't it? I am that I am. So anyway, so there's all the Tabwamasi, you are that. You are that. You are spiritual. But these are not really important sayings. Important sayings are things like Hare Krishna, Om, like Krishna says in the Gita, Pranavasara Vedeshu, Shabdake Shabdashu, that I am the syllable Om in the Vedic literature. That's a Mahabhakya. And Om is actually Radha Krishna and the living entity, A-U-M. Radha Krishna and the living entity. It's the same thing as chanting Hare Krishna, a different way of chanting Hare Krishna. So he's sitting right near the Ganges, this Mayavadi sannyasi, and he's a Paramahamsa Mayavadi. Now, Paramahamsa means a topmost swan-like person who is completely absorbed in spirituality. In this particular case, we have Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti, Shabdate, Nanti Tattva, as Bhagavatam says, that he's absorbed in the Brahman, the undifferentiated spiritual energy, which is the effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So what happens is you go, Hum Brahmasmi, whatever he's doing, and this devotee comes by in Harinam, as a pure devotee, and starts chanting, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. And this Mayavadi sannyasi, he doesn't say anything. He says, why am I feeling ecstasy? What's happening here? So by that Agyata Sukriti, he becomes enlivened. And Krishna in the heart guides him to go to Mayapur. It's amazing, just hearing the sound vibration. Brahmanda Brahmate Konda Bhagavan Jiv Guru Krishna Prasadi Vai Bhakti Lata. It's described the living entity as wandering from one universe, or one part of the universe, or all the universes, and finally, by the mercy of Krishna, he gets Guru, and by the mercy of Guru, he gets this Bhakti Lata Beach. I had a similar experience because I wasn't in my party. I was chanting, yeah, I wasn't. So I was listening to the radio and I heard Prabhupada. And we're just like, okay, time to join the Hare Krishna movement. It's like the Pied Piper, you know the story of Pied Piper? Yeah. Prabhupada was the Pied Piper. He played the drums, not a pipe. And everyone left their families. You know the story of the Pied Piper?
Yeah.
Everybody knows the story? Because the Pied Piper, it has nothing to do with Krishna consciousness, but it's interrelated. He got rid of all the rats in the village, and the people didn't want to pay him for that. So he said, I'll take away all the children instead. So he played his flute, and all the children left their home. So Prabhupada, so the parents didn't want to be Krishna conscious. So let's make a metaphor here. Parents didn't want to be Krishna conscious, so Prabhupada in India wanted some young people to join him, and none of the parents would give their children. And so Prabhupada came to the West, played the mridanga. The children followed, and the parents said, give him back to me. Like there's that story about Brahmananda. His mother went to see Prabhupada, and Prabhupada actually was being very bold, said, I'm taking care of your two sons. Would you give a donation for their upkeep? Basically. Prabhupada was so bold. I mean, it's just like things I would never do that, you know. You got the two kids there, you know, just leave well enough alone. He says to the mother gets angry, he says, I'm giving you my two children! And now you're asking me for money? You know, Prabhupada, you know, other instances, is that when Prabhupada was looking at the Fisher Mansion to buy it in Detroit, Prabhupada asked him to donate it. And another time he sent a devotee, there's this airport in Chicago named O'Hare Airport. And Prabhupada sent a devotee to get them to change the name to Oh Hare Krishna. To the airport manager. You know, Prabhupada's extremely bold that way. Anyway. So, let's get back to the story. So Brahmanda Brahmate. So the seed of devotion was planted in the heart of the sannyasi. And he just went to Mayapur, just ended up in Mayapur, and he took shelter at the lotus feet of a person named Prem Das Babaji. And they went to study a book by Jagadananda Pandit called the Prema Vivarta. That means the illusion of love, basically. Vivarta, illusion of love. And so the sannyasi already had control of his mind and senses, so it really helped him advance his spiritual life. And he asked some questions of his guru, and he didn't know the answer, even though he was a realized sannyasi. He said, what is the true duty of the individual soul? Why do different teachers give different explanations in the path of the truth of religion? If there's only one truth, why do philosophers not agree in their opinions? Actually, Prabhupada said that to be a Muni means you have to have a separate opinion from all the other philosophers or all the other Munis. So his guru gave the answers. He explained what our original vastu, original nature is. Our original nature is Jivara Sufa Diksha Krishna Das. And he explained about the Supreme Personality of God, the Lord's energies, and the relationship, that's Sambandha. And he explained all Sambandha, this is all Sambandha Gyan. Sambandha, as we described before, means the basic philosophy, theoretical. It's really theoretical stuff. Like, you got the material energy, Krishna creates, is the source of both the material energy and the spiritual energies. There's the time factor, you know, the different subject matters of the Bhagavad Gita. There's karma, jiva, the material energy, the spiritual energy, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, like this, and time. So all this is Sambandha. And after a while, he gets instructions in Abhideya, how to perform devotional service. After having all of his doubts cleared, such as who is Shankaracharya. Actually, we should talk about this because this is a basic misunderstanding that people have about Hinduism. That they think that, you know, Shankaracharya's philosophy is Hinduism. So Shankaracharya was actually Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva appeared to present a bogus philosophy. But the reason he presented this bogus philosophy is because he presented this bogus philosophy, which is called covered Buddhism, in order to take away people's interest in Buddhism and drive the Buddhists out of India. Because the Buddhists had become very popular right after Buddha appeared, especially with the Emperor Ashoka, which I think most of you know, have heard about the Emperor Ashoka, became very popular in India because the Brahmanas were exploiting people, and they were killing animals too. Prabhupada talked about that. So Buddha wanted to just do away with the Brahmanas' excuse for exploiting people and create a more homogeneous society where everyone had a right for spiritual life. So later on, of course, the Brahmanas reverted to form and created this caste system in which only it gave certain people a right to spiritual life, or a right to Brahmanism, or a right to whatever position in society. And then you have these things called the scheduled caste, the outcasts, the bungis, and everything like that after that. But originally, Buddhism was brought into India by Buddha to counteract the Brahmanas' misconceptions, or the misconceptions that the Brahmanas were teaching. So Shankaracharya came to get rid of the Buddhists and bring people back to the Vedic literatures, but they weren't ready to be brought back to the Vedic literatures completely. So he brought them back with a sort of a covered Buddhism, or like something very similar to Buddhism, which is impersonalism, misinterpreting the Vedic literatures. But at least he was successful in that regard. And he also taught about worship of Vishnu, but he also taught that worship of Vishnu and all these other types of worship are temporary to achieve your ultimate goal. And that's not what the Vedas actually say. If we look at the Bhagavad Gita, read the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Brahmanel Pratishthaham, I am the source of the impersonal Brahman. So anyway, so he dealt with this sannyasi's doubts and Mayavadi conceptions. And then he taught him about Vaishnavas, the different types of Vaishnavas. And eventually by this guru's instructions, the sannyasi realized by the chanting of the Lord's holy names, he realized the pastimes of Lord Krishna. And he was able to have a vision of the holy land of Mayapur as it was when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was there, by the mercy of his guru. Now that's a really important thing that I experienced, not a vision of Mayapur, but anyway, I experienced the first time I met Prabhupada. It was like a window opened up to the spiritual world. You know, I actually could see, like, so the spiritual mass was transparent via media between the jiva soul and the spiritual realm. So everything just opened up wide, just being in the physical presence of Prabhupada, and I actually forgot that I was in this material world, had a material body. Of course, a few days later I remembered. But, so by that Vaishnava's association, so this is a very important point, of association with the Vaishnava, then he decided to stay, the sannyasi decided to stay with the devotees, and at this point he dressed as a Vaishnava with tilak and tulsi beads, and he realized that it was only through his guru's mercy that he was able to make advancement spiritually, and the guru gave him the name Vaishnava Das. And the guru said that there are 3 medicines that can cure the disease of repeated death: the dust of the Vaishnava's feet, the water that is washed with the Vaishnava's feet, and the food that has touched the Vaishnava's lips. And this is, as we've heard this before, 3 very, very powerful substances. And then ultimately his guru told him that humility is the key. Humility is planted as a seed by the Vaishnavas into the heart of another soul. Without taking shelter of the Vaishnavas, there is no hope, and association with Vaishnavas is the key to actually attaining Krishna consciousness. So these are some of the stories in a nutshell. There's a lot more, but I didn't have time to tell a lot more. Some of the stories. Does anybody have any questions or comments about any things I said, or any aspect of Krishna consciousness?
Maharaj?
Yeah.
I was, while you were reciting about how Shankaracharya was driving away the Buddhism,
Yeah.
and because when, at least before I was coming to Krishna consciousness and all, I used to follow like his life story and all. Every time he used to step out from one place to other, there was always a debates and all throughout his
Right.
life. And at that time, like the way for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when we hear about the stories and all, he was like, debating with Prakashananda Saraswati and all. Like that,
Right.
at that time of Shankaracharya also, there should have been some Vaishnava Acharyas, right? So weren't there been any debates and all?
Yes, oh yes, of course. Now, even before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but then you have many Vaishnavacharyas. Of course, you have the Sri Vaishnavas, Ramanujacharya, who is famous for his debates. You have Madhvacharya, who is famous. You know, Madhvacharya is holding his hand up like this, Dvaita, as just opposing, even his mudra is actually opposing the Mayavadi conception. So that's Madhvacharya, the famous Madhvacharya, in the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, which we're members of course. Ramanujacharya, Nimbarkacharya, all these Vaishnavacharyas opposed Shankaracharya's interpretation. And but still the misconception is given to those who study Hinduism that Hinduism is actually based upon Shankaracharya's teachings, and a lot of that has to do with the popularity in India of Ramakrishna and Vivekananda. You've heard about them before?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, because you know the story about Vivekananda came to the United States, preached in Chicago and everything like that, and presented Hinduism. And generally, if you go to the university, that's what you're going to hear that Hinduism is. Something along the lines of Shankaracharya's philosophy. And but basically, as far as what Hinduism is, I mean, let's not even talk about Hinduism, because Hinduism, the word Hinduism is a geographical designation that was imposed by outsiders upon those who are practicing religion in India. We're more interested in Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana Dharma means eternal principles, the eternal tattva, eternal practices that are, Dharma actually means, let's go back a little bit. The word Dharma means the essential aspect of something. It doesn't simply mean duty. You know, sometimes people say, well, my Dharma is to be a computer programmer. You know, that's asat Dharma. But you're a sat Dharma, I don't think eternally when you go back to the spiritual world, you're going to be programming computers or, you know, whatever else you're doing. Working for Microsoft in the spiritual world, the great saint Bill Gates will employ you. So, but Sat Dharma means eternal religious principles. So, Dharma actually means it's something that sustains the essential quality of something. Probably would often give the example of water. You say the natural quality of water is liquidity. Now I know we can make water like ice, it can be solid, but it's not the natural quality normally in most temperate places unless you go to Alaska. So that's what Dharma is. And so anyway, Sanatana Dharma basically means the same thing, eternal Dharma. So more or less you could say that we're followers of Sanatana Dharma. Although nowadays that's another organization, the Sanatana Dharma organization. So we're not really associated with them, but technically that's what we're doing, Sanatana Dharma, eternal religious principles, things that are connected with the soul and help us realize our eternal spiritual identity. That's a description, you know, and Vaishnavas. You know, that's another way we can describe us. We're Vaishnavas, worship of Vishnu, Krishna, and any one of his innumerable expansions, like the devotees of Lord Brahma are also Vaishnavas. Devotees of Krishna. It's a generic term for worship of Krishna or any of his expansions. That's a Vaishnava. And also you have the Shaivites, like if you go to Kanchipuram, for example, in South India, you have Vishnu Kanchi and Shiva Kanchi, and they're always arguing with each other. And then you have some real conflicts. Like there was one king, I forget his name, he wanted to convince Ramanujacharya to worship Vishnu. Kuresh, no, his name wasn't Kuresh. His name, what was the king's name? I forget the king's name. I forget. He wanted to convince Ramanujacharya to worship Vishnu. So he called for Ramanujacharya. So Ramanujacharya knew what the king was up to. So he sent his assistant, Kuresh, there instead. So Kuresh went to see the king. And the king said, will you worship Shiva instead of Vishnu? And what Kuresh actually said really agitated the king, really did what he considered to be an offense. And the king put out his eyes thinking he was putting out the eyes of Ramanujacharya. And so later on, of course, Ramanujacharya asked Kuresh to go before the deity of Radha Kanchi, and asked for his eyes back. First, Kuresh just asked for the king to be forgiven. But then after Ramanujacharya insisted, Kuresh asked that back because his eyes belonged to his guru. And then he got his eyes back. A famous story about Sripad Ramanujacharya. But you will find conflicts in India between the Shaivites and the Vaishnavites. And we respect the Shaivites because Lord Vishnu was actually the greatest Vaishnava, Vaishnavadi Yatam Shambhu. And Lord Shiva also says, Aradhanam Sarvesham Vishnu Aradhanam Param Tasmat Parataram Devi Tvariyanam Samarjanam. Of all types of worship of Vishnu is supreme, and better than that is worship of Vishnu's devotees. So we very much appreciate Lord Shiva. So we're not sectarian like that. Although we do know Lord Shiva's ontological position. He's an expansion of Krishna, but he's not Vishnu Tattva. The Brahma Samhita describes it's like the yogurt that has been made from the milk. And the yogurt is very nice, the milk is very nice, but you can't make milk from yogurt, you can only make yogurt from milk. And Lord Shiva especially expands from Krishna in order to deal with the material world, because Krishna, but Goloka Evi Nivashti Aki Lakman Bhuta, Krishna never touches the material energy. He doesn't touch. In fact, his only contact with the material energy is basically his aikshata, his glance. And that glance is actually personified as Lord Shiva, Shambhu. And Lord Shiva contacts Maya, Durga, and through that conjugation, you have the living entities such as ourselves placed within this material realm. So Lord Shiva is our father, and certainly we respect him. Isn't it? He's our father, Durga is our mother. And Krishna, of course, Aham Bija Pratapita. Krishna's the original father, but we have other fathers too. So, any other questions or comments?
Maharaj, I have one more question. If
Yeah.
that's okay. Talking about Sripad Ramanujacharya Maharaj, it is believed that he is the incarnation of Balarama himself.
Yeah, Lakshman actually.
Yeah. So the question I was having was, why was that Sripad Ramanujacharya was heavily promoting our Narayana instead of Krishna?
Ah, that's very interesting. Because each and every one of the expansions or incarnations of God, they have a specific mission. And there's a gradual in the history of the revelation of the absolute truth. There's a gradual evolution of that. And that evolution culminates in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance. Of course, Krishna was revealed by the other great acharyas too. And Ramanujacharya did not, he recognized Krishna as an avatar. But Ramanujacharya and many of the other acharyas thought that Vishnu was, Swayam Bhagavan, at least presented, didn't think, okay, there's a difference. He presented that Vishnu was Swayam Bhagavan, and that all the other avatars came from Vishnu. However, in the Bhagavatam it states, Iti Chamsa Kalapulsa Krishna is to Bhagavan Swayam, that all the other avatars come from Krishna. Now, you may say, why did you present this something that's not true? Well, it's not false either. Because Advaita Chuta Nadir Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha. What does that mean? That means there's one God, and he appears in various situations doing different things. So in one sense, it's not when we talk about Vishnu expanding from Krishna or Balaram expanding from Krishna, he's not lesser than Krishna. The word expansion is used, but that doesn't mean that they are any lesser, because the word Advaita is used. They're the same, but the only thing that is lesser in any sense is the manifestation, or how much he manifests. Does that make sense? Like Balaram and Krishna are the same, Ram and Krishna are the same, but they're manifesting less of intimacy. Like if you weigh things on the scale of intimacy, which is, you can do objectively. So on the scale of intimacy, you see that the Krishna, somebody Hindu now. So, too much bad association. Anyway, so you see that Krishna and the relationship that Krishna has with his devotees is the most intimate, the closest relationship. Like no one goes up to Vishnu and slaps Vishnu on the back. No one chases Vishnu with a stick to beat him. I've never read that story. I mean, once in a while Lakshmi leaves it because she's upset. That's a different story. But she doesn't beat him. So, but you have story, Krishna is really intimate stories about the deal with Krishna's exchanges with the gopis, exchanges with the coward boys. Like some coward boys are riding on Krishna's back, fighting with Krishna. When you see fighting with Vishnu, it's actually demons who are doing that business, not in the spiritual world. So you find so examining the qualities exhibited. Also, we find the four qualities that only Krishna exhibits, like unexcelled beauty, intimate pastimes, plays a flute. Vishnu doesn't play a flute. What instrument does he play? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, he plays on demons. So, Shiva plays a demon. So, intimate devotees and all these things like that. So you find these four qualities that only Krishna exhibits. So just objectively seen. So Prabhupada obviously we understand Krishna's two Bhagavan Swayam. He's the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. But Prabhupada would sometimes say, whether you take Vishnu is coming from Krishna or Krishna coming from Vishnu, ultimately they're the same person. Confirmed. See, whenever it's like in India they have this tiki, the lizard goes tiki. Oh, yeah. So in America we have electronic sounds that do the same thing. So if you say something and there's something like that, it actually. So I just have people arrange for their mobile phone to go off when I say something to confirm what I say. So anyway, so ultimately we don't argue about things like that. And it's so wonderful when someone is devoted to their particular form of the Lord. We don't start arguing them out of it. Like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very much appreciated different devotees who were dedicated to Lord Ram, like Murari Gupta or Anupama. And he tested them to see their dedication. He said, chant Hare Krishna instead of chanting Ram, 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 or Sita Ram. But ultimately, he was very much appreciative of that, because there's only one God, Advaita Chuta Nadi Radhanta Rupam, Adyam Purana Purusham, Yogam Cha, Vedeshu Durlabha Durlabha, Atmadakta Govinamadi Purusham, Dharmam Pujame. So we try to remember that so we don't really get into that controversy. Because I'm not going to argue with someone, as long as they like God, it's the same God. Your God, my God, isn't it? It's God. Like Prabhupada was very happy even when the Christians worshiped God. Although the only thing he was unhappy with is if they didn't follow the 10 Commandments, like thou shalt not kill, and other commandments like that. So, any other questions? No? No other questions? Comments?
Much.
Yeah.
writing from Moses to Mahaprabhu. He was very inclusive of all the religions, and he was saying how every religion is respectable in its own accord, but the rasa that is given in each religion, it is just upgraded from the dasya to
Right.
opulence to dasya to up to the Mahaprabhu, which is
majority.
Madhurya Bhava.
Yeah.
So it was so wonderful that he has acknowledged all the religions, how sacred they are, but he also delineates and shows how the relationship between the soul and the super soul just gets so personal and concentrated as it gets upgraded from general God awareness
Right.
to different religions to Mahaprabhu given that
Madhurya
Madhurya
Bhava.
Bhava.
Yes. Yes, in the Chaitanya Shikshamrita, Bhaktivinode Thakura says that when we see someone worshiping God in the room we live in, we should appreciate that they are worshiping God a different way, that they're worshiping Krishna. But we should actually think this is wonderful. I mean, sometimes I go to other ceremonies of different religions, and I appreciate. I mean, one time I went to this Hillsong church, maybe you've heard of that, and I was appreciating. I was up there, Jai, all glory is to Lord Jesus, because Prabhupada said Lord Jesus is our guru too, because he's teaching pure love of God, and he's teaching, as Bhaktivinode Thakur did, the Atmanivedanam, complete surrender and dedication to helping other people. Kripa Sindhu, and being an ocean of mercy. And that, like I described in the beginning of this discussion, you see Bhaktivinode Thakur dedicating his whole life just to helping others, which is a wonderful example. So, people are asking questions online. So, we won't take any online questions. So any other questions or comments? All right. So what happens to Prasad? All right. Thank you. It's nice to visit here. It's a long trip. It's all right. We had a good
Thank
time.
you so much, Maharaj.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
So a little prasadam for everybody. All glories to Sri Krishna Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Bhaktivinode Thakur ki jai. Very well.
Hare Krishna, so let's thank Maharaj for coming here all the way and enlightening us, and also for the beautiful bhajans by Bhaktivinode Thakur.